So let's see the demo. Let's talk a little bit more about this, but with something real, if you will, rather than just slides. So I've got a VNC console here. You have to bear with me for the, hopefully we can see it okay. And yeah, I'm unfortunately gonna have to do a little bit of typing, so you'll have to endure that as well. But what I've got here is 3 different windows that we'll use. I'm connected to I'm in a environment with a rack database, 3-node rack database running. I've tried to duplicate as closely as possible the services both in this presentation, and then I'll have we have a blog post that follows this as well, so that you can, it all kind of hopefully will make some sense to you. But let's take a look at, I've already set up services, and so the database itself using server control status. So we're actually running 3 instances, 3 nodes, DB 18, 18.2, 18.3, and then what I should have done is I should have saved. Let's see what the services look like.
Andy, you've got a typo, I'm afraid. Sorry to be a backseat driver.
That's why I don't like to type when I'm, but that's such as life. You'd think being computer people, we'd be really good typists, but unfortunately in this environment here, I don't have a normal keyboard. So we have already our IM1, IM2, and since it's a 3-node example, we have IM3, each running on, IM1 only running on the instance DB18, IM2 obviously 2, and IM3 on 3. And then our IM_all runs across all 3 of those instances. So that's mirrors very closely the example we have in our slide. I just went too far. Fairly closely here, so we have a 3-node example rather than a 2-node example. But that's kind of the point, was we have this available to take a look at. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to connect to one of the nodes, and I'm going to show you what's populated. So what we're going to do is I have a little script here that basically shows us, what is populated in all 3 column stores. So notice that I'm looking at GV $IM_segments, and so I have instance ID. So we have the line order table, our normal SSV schema we use in all of our blog posts, our hands-on labs. We use a SSV schema. So line order tables, essentially our fact table, it's the large table. Notice that it's populated across all 3 nodes. I use the in this case, I use the IM_all service for that. Then we have our part table is only populated on node 3. And then our supplier table, in this case, is only populated on node 2. And so I've created services, or I've said alter table in memory, part for service IM3, and alter table supplier in memory, distribute for service IM2. So I've associated those 2 tables with the single service. So in this case, if we wanted to say part might be like a payables application, and supplier might be part of a purchasing or inventory application, and those applications need to run separately so that the workload doesn't interfere with each other. So we might have those isolated to different nodes. If we wanted to run our normal star schema type queries, we would probably connect to the IM_all so that we could access all 3 nodes, and the column stores in all 3 nodes. Otherwise, we would be getting data, the queries would run, but we wouldn't get data from the column store we were interested in. So let's look at that example. So let's query since I connected to IM3, the node 3. So let's take a look at and query the part table, since it's populated only on node 3, and see what that looks like. And so in this case, I don't have to do much typing, because I created a script called part and ran pretty fast. All it does literally is select P category and count, so an aggregation from the part table. We're grouping by the category to see how many values we have across each, how many parts across each category. And then how do we tell that we access the column store? Well, let's take a look at the statistics. And here we see that we did indeed, we have our IM statistics, we did our IM scan, some SIMD, which is good. And notice table scans IM is 1. And this mirrors essentially the work that Maria did in a blog post she did for us on this very topic, which I have in a pointer to in the next slide. So when we go back to the slides. But we can see that we connected to the IM3 service. The part table is populated in the node 3 or IM3 node, if you will. And we were actually able to allocate or access that data then from the column store. So now what happens if we were to connect to a different node? Because we know node 1 and 2 don't have the part table available to it in the column store if we connect to that service. So we'll run the same query, part. Still runs pretty fast. It's a small table. And then we'll look at the stats for that query. Here, notice that we don't see all of our IM scan statistics, and we don't see our table scans IM we saw before. Instead, we're just doing a normal row store query or buffer cache, if you will. And so we weren't able to access that object in the column store. So if we go back to my query up here, whoops, I'm flying right by it, didn't I? So since the part table is only in node 3, we have to connect to a service that includes that node in order to access that data. And so that's the big takeaway or caveat to using connections, service connections to populate the column store and to run a subset of nodes. And so as long as you understand that, which hopefully you do now, then you can leverage this and the ability to then run with services in a subset of nodes, or either a single node or one. You can do this with more than one node. If you have a very large cluster, then you can segregate by multiple nodes, and it's very flexible as long as your connections and your applications honor the services that you've populated the objects in with database and memory.